Hey, Finello here, and this is my show. Welcome. A while back, a very generous person commissioned me to do this Cosmic Ghostrider piece, and I'm going to show you how I painted it and talk about some of the tools I use for it, so I'm just going to cut to that right now.
But first, check out these sketchbooks I made for my Patreon subscribers. If you want to get awesome stuff like this in your mailbox every 3 months, then head on over to patreon.com/hellopinello and pick one of the mail drop tiers. Not only will you get a quarterly mail drop, but you'll also get a commission on your subscription anniversary. Commercial over. Now, let's talk tools. I've been drawing for a long time, like seriously studying it for a long time. So naturally I've tried a variety of tools and found some that I keep coming back to. I don't use these supplies for every watercolor drawing, but I highly recommend them if you want to get into this kind of work. First up, paper. I like the Strathmore 400 series cold press 140 pound paper. It's a decent quality for a low price. It's got a great texture that lends nicely to dry brushing. It does buckle under heavy washes, but you can solve that by wetting the paper and taping it to a board so that it'll stretch when it dries. That'll keep it from buckling while you work. I generally don't do that and have to deal with warped paper. It's not a big deal. When you're finished, you can wet the back side and iron it out. Brushes. I'm snobby about them. I'm trying to be better about that, but I've tried so many, and for the types of lines that I like to make, I keep coming back to my Raphael 8404s. Size 1 and 2 are what I'm most comfortable with, but if I'm feeling daring, I bust out the Fat Boy size 3. Seriously, I can't say enough good things about these brushes. The bristles have this snap to them that gives you great control over your lines when you're working from thin to thick. And they last for years if you take care of them. I love them so much I got them tattooed on my arm. I mostly use the 8404s for inking and a bit for watercolor. This next brush is my workhorse for watercolor. I have no idea what type it is. I got it when I used to make crowns for a living. Not the kind you wear on your head, but the kind you get after a root canal. I was assigned this brush for my porcelain work. Basically, I took porcelain powder, wet it with the brush, and used the brush to sculpt a tooth. When I quit doing that type of work, I took the brush with me. Since it was the same type of hair as the 8404s, I figured it would be good for drawing. And it is. I've had this thing for 7 years. It sculpted hundreds of teeth, went on to do hundreds of drawings, and still holds its point like it's brand new. I wish I knew what it was so I could buy more. It has a fat belly so it can hold a ton of water, which is great for washes. And since it still holds its point, it can make a variety of strokes from thick to razor fine. The rest of these are cheap brushes I got at Target. I said I was trying to be less snobby about brushes. I haven't used them too much, but they all seem to have their uses, and they're synthetic fibers so they should last a long time. For ink, I use Kuretake Black Ink 60. When I get a new bottle, I leave the lid off overnight so it dries out a little. After that, it has a slightly thicker texture, and the black comes out more opaque. I managed to go through most of a video about watercolor painting and not talk about watercolors. That ends now. The set I'm using now is one my wife heard about on YouTube, and she thought I'd like it, so she got it for me. As with most things in life, she was right about this. I love this set. The brand is QOR, or Core, maybe, and the colors are vibrant right out of the tube. They can take a lot of water without fading, so they work great for washes and glazes, which is exactly what you want watercolor paint to do. That is literally all I have to share about my tools for this piece. I know, I'm shocked too. I really thought it would take longer. I still have 4 minutes to fill. I guess I can talk a little bit about my approach to painting, though I hesitate to do it because I have no formal training, and I'll probably end up passing on all my bad habits to you. So maybe turn on some background music and watch the rest of this on mute. I like to start out with light washes, usually on the background first, and then building up the value and saturation while it's still wet. That allows the value to blend seamlessly from light to dark, and colors can just merge together. After my washes dry, I start defining more specific areas by building up layers of shadows and avoiding my highlights. Remember, watercolor is transparent, so you can only go darker. It's important to know what areas need to stay light and only put the minimum amount of paint necessary to get the value that you want. Some thoughts on color. When I first started painting, Choosing the right colors baffled me. I would end up picking too many and ended up with a painting that had no color harmony. I managed to get around that by limiting my palette and learning what colors mix well together. For this piece, I used diarrhyllide yellow, alizarin crimson for red, Payne's gray for blue, and dioxazine purple. Payne's gray is an interesting color because when used at full saturation, it's almost black. I use it for most of my shadows. Like Payne's gray, dioxazine purple is also very dark. I use that in areas where I want a warmer shadow. When mixed with yellow, it makes a warm golden brown, and adding a hint of Payne's gray will dull it out. Using various mixes of those three colors, I painted most of the background. I used mostly red and yellow for painting the skull and the flames, but in certain areas I needed to go darker, so I added a little bit of purple. That gave a brownish burnt tinge to my dark values. When I got everything as finished as I could, with watercolor, I busted out some gouache paint. Gouache is more opaque than watercolor, so you can use it to paint light values over dark ones, and they still stay light. I went over the whole piece, punching up my highlights and making the flames look more fiery. There's a point in every painting that I call the ugly stage. It usually happens right after I lay down the washes and I've only started refining the details. I look at the mess on the paper and think, how will this ever come together? This happens literally every time I paint, but after years of painting, this stage has become less intimidating. Sure, sometimes I can't find my way out and end up with a piece I don't like. As my Peloton instructors are so fond of saying, the only way out is through. And so, experience has shown me that by pushing through the ugly stage, over time, my successes in painting outpace my failures.
Y'all, that's all I have for you. I appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. If you want to support the show, do the whole like, subscribe, and share thing. And if you want to help me make more videos, art, and comics, head on over to patreon.com and see if there's a tier of patronage that you think provides value for you. Thank you again, and I will see you all in the next video.